Hello and welcome back to the Villa Filler podcast. It's after games like this that I really wish I didn't have to be coming with you solo. The whole point of this podcast, one of the big parts of it, is that I get to sit here with my very good friend and co-host, Dan Morgan. But wherever he is, wherever you watch the game, wherever you're listening, Dan, I hope you enjoyed it because boy, oh boy, did that, God, 107 minutes of ridiculous football, whatever it was, at the end that top wouldn't stop ticking. My oh my, has this Villa team impressed once again. It's a draw that, for me at least, feels very much like a win. It's one that means for the very first time this season, European football is in our hands, regardless of the teams around us, regardless of games in hand. If we win on the last day of the season at home to Brighton next Sunday at 4:30, Aston Villa will be in European competition next season. What a job Unai Emery has done, what a job this team has done. I think today, to go over it, I think it's since Unai came in and since we've really been in the frame for European football, I don't think there's been a game that's really summarised the character within this team like today did, because if you start it off in the first sort of 15 minutes, it was a decent start. I don't feel like Liverpool were all over us. I don't feel like we were a particularly dominant force in the game to sort of counteract that with, but I felt that we made a good start and it was an even encounter, and that's part of the battle. So I think if we sort of look at this game in stages, there's the first battle, because you know what this game means to Liverpool. They have their own fight of their own, a hugely important one of that in their race for Champions League football. They know that United are ahead of them and have a game in hand on them as well. And so making up points at every available opportunity is important. And going into that game and keeping Anfield at a pretty tepid level and making sure that it wasn't whipped up into a frenzy or anything like that was really impressive, I thought, in its own way. And we went there and we looked like a side that, for what it's worth, could really hold our own, and I really thought we did. And then we have the first penalty, the penalty incident. This was the first of many referee decisions that I found difficult to come to terms with today, to be honest with you, because I didn't think it was a penalty at first. I'm watching on the feed. I didn't think it looked like a penalty. I thought Konate got to it. You see then on the footage that he gets far more of Watkins than he does of Konate, and then gets a booking. And I just don't. Surely, if you're going to give a penalty in that situation with Ollie bearing down on goal, Konate takes him out just outside of the 6-yard box, went into the penalty area, very much last man. Surely that's a red card. And I like to come on this podcast and be reasonable with the officials and understand that they have a very difficult job, but I try to reason with it, and I think the only thing that I can see is that I think Ollie takes a slightly heavy touch, and with Alisson right in front of him, Alisson claims that ball quite easily, and I'm not 100% sure that Ollie would have got there. Maybe he would, but I'm sort of playing devil's advocate here. That's all that I can see, and then Ollie steps up and misses the penalty, and that's, I believe, consecutive penalties that he's missed now for Villa. Obviously, the caveat to that was I think the one before this was all the way back in 2020. Danny Ings has been our penalty taker when we've scored them this season. And again, it's one where you have to look at the whole situation. You're at Anfield in front of the Kop end with everything that's on the line for two clubs. You're aware of how huge that penalty is, that a goal. He misses the target, and it's one where I think Ollie, because he's the striker, sets up by default. I don't think he's a natural penalty taker. And this, for me, is when you have the second incredible moment of resilience and the display of character, really, because I'll be honest with you, as soon as that penalty went wide of the far post, I thought we'd lost. I really did. Anfield just picked up all of a sudden. You know what happens when a player not only misses a penalty but puts it wide of the target. The cheers start, the stadium is whipped up into a frenzy. Liverpool suddenly have this huge like get out of jail free card presented to them, and they snatch it off us. And it just, we've been to Anfield so many times, and you sort of feel that that's the best chance you're going to get sometimes. But for Villa to bounce back from that in the way that we did and almost show no regret whatsoever, there was no mental fragility at all. For that to happen, and then within the same period, within the same, I'll try and get up the exact minutes here in which we scored, but obviously Ollie misses that penalty, and then we go about 15 minutes, I think that's all it is, before JJ then puts it into the back of the net. And, you have this incredible moment where JJ is reeling off in front of the cop and he's celebrating. Yes, Konate, 20 minutes, the penalty was given, 22nd minute, the penalty was taken. And then 39 minutes, so yeah, just over 15 minutes later, JJ scores, and it's this beautiful lofted ball from Douglas Luiz into the pass of an onrushing JJ. It feels very much like it's a carbon copy of that Leicester goal that sent us to Wembley in the Carabao Cup, where it's El Mohammadi floating that ball over the back line for an onrushing Trezeguet at the time. But yeah, JJ finishes it so brilliantly. 100 Villa games for him. And what a way to mark it. You reeled off, inject that celebration into the veins. Amazing stuff. And when we went 1-0 up, I just felt that was an incredible moment of mental resilience to not get downbeat after the penalty miss, to stay in the game, and then to take it to the point where you have them on the and you're able to score a goal like that. Just so impressive. And I felt that it continued for the second half. And hindsight is 2020, and it's, we concede 56th minute. Cody Gakpo scores an offside goal. And for what it's worth there, I mean, to go to the monitor on an offside decision. I mean, look, I'll sit here and be as impartial as I can. I think if I was a Liverpool fan now, I'd be so confused. I don't think I've ever seen that happen. I'd love to know what the reasoning was there, but you've got so many inconsistencies sort of in the refereeing performance. You've got that Mings. I personally didn't, maybe this is because I'm a Villa fan, didn't personally think his challenge on Cody Gakpo in the first half was a red card. I think he's very much within his own right to challenge for that ball. I think the co-commentator was sort of saying he should put his head in for it, and then put your head, like, dive into the chest of an onrushing striker. Like, I do think this when you sort of get these high foot challenges. I'm like, what is the defender supposed to do? He's damned if he does, damned if he doesn't, because he puts his foot in there, he gets a red card, doesn't put that, Cody Gakpo runs past him, and you're sort of questioning the virtues of defending by asking defenders to not put their foot in there. But, you've seen them given ultimately, and it went to VAR, and it's basically a coin toss when that happens. But obviously the offside goal is given, and Van Dijk's deemed to be offside in the build-up. Liverpool saw their effort chalked off, and we survive again. And again, when you have that, you have this long period where Villa really creep back into defensive shape. We bring on the likes of Ashley Young, and Ali Breda comes on too, but he obviously gets injured. Looks like it's a groin problem for him, was holding that groin. So it'd be interesting to see just how serious that is, because I think he'd be really useful to have. And we just defended like Trojans. Thought Ezri was brilliant. I mean, Tyrone Mings, I feel like we're saying it almost every week at this point. What a player he's become for this Villa side. And he's just been so reliable ever since I came in. To shout out our good friend AVFC Stato again. 42 touches, 5 passes into the final third from Tyrone Mings. Absolutely incredible. 10 clearances, 5 headed clearances, 5 interceptions, 4 recoveries, and 3 ground duels won. I mean, every week it's just ridiculous what the level to which Tyrone Mings is performing at. He seems to have eradicated all of those errors from his game. He's very much the main man in this side, and I think going forward the defence will be built around him. I think he's a real unicorn of a player. How often, you try and find me another 6'5" left-footed centre half in world football that can put into 5 passes into the opposition third or whatever it was. Just crazy. What a performance from him. And then you have this really well-worked goal from Liverpool right at the death. 88 minutes. Bobby Firmino scores, and his last ever game at Anfield, you have to assume. Villa, we always feel like we're on the wrong end of these written in the stars moments, doesn't it? And with James Milner on the pitch, is lucky that he didn't get his swan song moment as well. But we ride it, and then there's a ridiculous 10 minutes of added time. And that, for me, is where I can comfortably say, I don't think any Villa team that I've seen in my lifetime, born in 1998, feel free to challenge me in the comments. I don't think I've ever seen a Villa team, not even the O'Neill team, would survive that 10 minutes of football. Certainly in the last decade, every other Villa team I've seen crumbles and we lose that game. And that's why this draw feels like a win, because it sets up this amazing last day of the season showdown with Brighton, where it's win or lose, not just for Europa Conference League, but Europa League is on the line as well. So if we look at how the table looks, Liverpool staying fifth on 66 points, 37 games played. Brighton have 35 games played and 58 points, but they have to play Southampton at the time of recording tomorrow on the Sunday, before they have Manchester City play them midweek before they come to Villa Park at the last day of the season. And then you have us 7th, 58 points as well, so tied with Brighton, before you go down to Spurs in 8th on 57. And just creeping into the frame, quite interestingly, are Brentford back in the picture, 1 point behind Spurs on 56 points. And so I think it's very difficult to call. I personally am a big advocate for the Conference League. I think that's the competition that I'd be gunning for. I know it's easy to say that when you're sat in 7th, but I think it's the competition that this Villa side are better suited to. I think it would provide a really nice warm-up for the Europa League. It offers you a second means of qualifying for that competition, because obviously if you win the Europa Conference League, then you can get into the Europa League that way. I think the Premier League team in that competition, regardless, is always in the top 3 or 4 favourites to go on and win it. I mean, you look at West Ham, how terrible and torrid their domestic season has been, and they've managed to get themselves to a European final where they'll play like a team like Fiorentina. It's just a dream. And so I think the Conference League would be a fantastic warm-up, and that's where Villa sit right now. We have this shootout with Brighton. It's depending on what their result is tomorrow against Southampton. It's then depending on how they do at the Amex against Manchester City this week. But what a game it will be for Villa next Sunday. I'm not going to talk about it too much, because this podcast is going to age very quickly. In just 24 hours time, we'll know how they've gotten on against Southampton, and then I'll record the preview after they play against Manchester City, just so we've got the full picture and we're not playing with guesswork. But Villa fans, wow. What an incredible run it's been to get to this point. I can't believe it. For the very first time, European football is in our hands, and that just feels incredible to say. It's a very emotional afternoon. I'm not too disappointed that we didn't come away with a win, because I think when we saw Brentford beat Tottenham earlier today, if you just said Spurs lose and Villa take a point, I think we all would have snatched their hands off, and we've done it in really, really impressive fashion. So, yeah, what an incredible performance from Moon Eyes boys. There's one more game to go, an all or nothing showdown on the last day of the season at 4:30, hopefully in the sunshine at Villa Park. Guys, the preview is going to be amazing. I'm so excited to get around to it already. That will come to you next week. We'll hopefully have Dan back as well the week after next, so we can be back involved as a duo at full conference, so that will be great. And so, yeah, I'm really looking forward to it, guys. But in the meantime, please show us some love. Drop a comment down below about how you feel about everything and anything Villa this season, how it's gone, Brighton, Villa, Spurs. Drop it in the comments. You know I love having a conversation with you guys down there, so please show us some love down there. Drop a like, subscribe. I've booked one more favourite review. There's a link in our bio as well that can take you to TikTok and Instagram pages, where you can find a bunch of condensed Villa filler content for those of you that don't always have time to watch a full podcast, which I totally understand. It means the world if you check that out. Guys, I'll be back in just a few days' time to preview this huge game, the biggest Villa game in a long time. I'm very excited about it. But until then, stay safe, keep yourselves well. Have a great week. Hello, Villa.